Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the sophomore posthumous album from JONGHYUN called Poet Artist. So I knew as soon as I even referenced K-pop as a possibility for my Resonator series, it would be only a matter of time before a K-pop album proper showed up on my schedule. Frankly, I'm surprised it hasn't been sooner given the genre's devout fan base. And yet there's a part of me that wishes it wasn't this album in particular to start things off. So, some context for those of you who don't know. JONGHYUN, the stage name of Kim Jong-hyun, was formerly a member of the massive K-pop boy band SHINee, who blew up in the late 2000s blending in elements of contemporary R&B and hip-hop into the traditional boy band stock type. But it didn't surprise me when JONGHYUN started releasing some solo projects. He was considered the lead artist in SHINee, and having revisited those solo compilations and his debut album She Is, I can see why he had so much potential. As much as SHINee has embraced elements of more reserved J-pop in order to flesh out their sound, JONGHYUN was just as reserved and tasteful, but in a more modern direction, pivoting into the sort of mid-2000s R&B that you'd hear from a guy like Neo, or maybe even Usher, albeit preferring more grooves driven off of warmer acoustic instrumentation or touches of lush 90s R&B or even G-funk. Even if the writing that I could translate didn't really wow me, I thought this guy had serious talent. He could have definitely been a solo success story in K-pop, one of very few, and I say could have, because in December of 2017, JONGHYUN died of toxic smoke inhalation in a death that's widely been considered a suicide, something that deeply shook idol culture in South Korea and around the world, and provided another serious note in the conversation about the hyper-competitive nature of the K-pop industry, and thus covering this album, which was to be released in January of 2018 with writing, production, and promotion nearly done before JONGHYUN's death. Well, it's awkward. Hell, all posthumous records are, and I wouldn't cover this as a matter of principle if I felt the money from this was going to anybody else beyond JONGHYUN's family in order to create a foundation to support people in troubled situations, which it is. So, okay, with that in mind, was this a proper send-off? Well, here's the frustrating thing about Poet Artist. There's a part of me that really doesn't want to have to consider this as a posthumous album, mostly because from the lyrics I could translate, it doesn't feel like one. It's not like Black Star, where David Bowie was acutely aware his death was coming and made that the centerpiece of his album, or like One More Light, where in retrospect Chester Bennington's lyrics pick up a striking, almost haunted quality. Now, Poet Artist, on the other hand, it feels like the next natural stepping stone in the career of a solo K-pop artist, elevating the 90s and 2000s R&B textures and then updating them to the 2010s to mixed degrees of success. And you'd be reaching to say that from this album you could have seen anything coming, which leaves a strange listening experience to someone who is at most just a casual fan, just dejected and kind of sad that JONGHYUN never had the chance to fully refine and realize his potential. Because make no mistake, JONGHYUN had real potential as a singer and a solo act in K-pop, eschewing much of the garish technicolor flash of modern K-pop that I'm not really a fan of for something that's a little bit more measured and mature. And when this record plays into that and his knack for groove and flow, it leads to the sort of pop R&B that you could easily see matching anything from Neo these days or current day Usher, along with a breathy but very clear falsetto that could easily put Chris Brown to shame, knock him out of the water. And that's important to emphasize here. For as much as the tones and production on this record, it would fit on mainstream radio, JONGHYUN, he didn't really need to rely on gratuitous autotune beyond some tight multi-tracking at points, to the point when we get the more hollowed out, modern, deep house tones of Rewind with a thicker reverb behind the vocals. It doesn't nearly play to his strengths, and it really sticks out on the album like a sore thumb in comparison with, say, the elegant guitar work on Take the Dive or Just for a Day, or the late 80s New Jack swing behind Sightseeing, or the very gentle, smooth jazz touches in the piano lines on Sentimental, or especially Before Our Spring, which is just a beautifully poignant way to end off the album. A really great tune there. Now, granted, the larger instrumental direction of Poet Artist is an update of the sound for something that would fit on the modern mainstream American radio. And while there's no interjected rap verses to fit in with the liquid, somewhat desaturated synths and percussion crib from modern electronic music or trap, with the skittering snares, the hi-hats, the hand claps, the snaps, and the physical busy beats. With this sort of production sheen, you could easily imagine this playing on mainstream radio. It's not like anybody could care that the lyrics are in a different language. They don't care about lyrics right now anyway. Hell, with the modern sounding hollow keys, the choppy vocal mix, and the knock of the slightly muffled beat on Only One You Need, or the layered snap and the firmer synth bass on I'm So Curious, you could give this to a lot of modern EDM producers and it would fit for them just fine. They don't quite work as well on the bassy, drippy trap knock of Grease, but that's more because the choppy triplet flows in Korean don't give him the same room that he can command so effectively. Granted, on the flip side, you get a song like Hashtag, with the very brittle snap, the faint groove, and the minimalist keys, where the flow almost didn't connect for me if it wasn't for the slight hint of guitar that's filling up more of the background detail and elevates it into a pretty decent song. Now, incidentally, that was a song that was getting some real press ahead of time for the release for its songwriting, mostly because it seemed like JONGHYUN was taking some gossip and social media to task for inflating minor things in somebody's life. And yeah, it's modestly clever, especially with the extended waffle metaphor, which I kind of dug, but this is where my limitations as a critic of K-pop come sharply into view. Because here's the thing. I don't speak Korean or Japanese. I'm relying on translations whenever I could find them, and thus there's bound to be some notes of poetry that just doesn't translate outside of the native Korean. Even though I can often get a rough gist of whatever we get the few lines of English that are thrown in, somewhat awkwardly. I'm not really a fan of that in K-pop. Now, with all that being said, I find it hard to consider most of the songwriting great or complex, but if I'm comparing it to the EDM-leaning side of American dance pop and R&B, this would fit right in. It's better than Chris Brown, whatever he puts out. That said, there are definitely songs that reflect a more thoughtful or even sour side of some of JONGHYUN's music, from the jabs against conformity on Sightseeing to the petulant, broken relationship scene in Grease. Just for a Day and Sentimental both get close to this territory, but thankfully steer away as the post-breakup anger and angst feels pretty well balanced. I actually don't mind either song. But again, the song that easily deserves the most attention and praise for its complexity in the writing is Before Our Spring. The closing song showing how he desperately wants to build or maybe rebuild some connection with this girl before time has them all move on and he can't rebuild it, but he fears the darker pangs of his depression and sadness will be contagious to them both in the relationship, and he's thus afraid to bring her closer. It's wistful and intimate and achingly sad. It's really the only way a record like this could end, but it does so with real gentle grace. It's a great little tune. I actually really appreciate it. So at the end of the day, look, I'll freely admit I'm not much of a K-pop fan, but if I was, an act like JONGHYUN would be one that I would like. A little bit more subtle and restrained with good taste in production and above average writing. It's a damn shame that he passed away so young with so much potential. And while I'm not going to say this is precisely a great record, there is enough charm, charisma, variety, and flair to make it an easy album for me to like and support. Very light 7 out of 10. I'm probably a little cooler on this in comparison to She Is or his compilations, mostly because I like more of that old school flavor in comparison with mainstream modern R&B right now. But for a modern American audience, it's a pretty damn accessible listen. It might just serve as a decent entry into K-pop, for as sadly ironic as that is. For me, it got there. Make some time, check this out, support this. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I can imagine some of you aren't expecting me to cover this, but hey, if you want to support a foundation that is probably going to donate to people in similar situations confronting depression or bad situations, it's better than Logan Paul, so link to buys in the description below, and I got the poll up there for all you diehard K-pop fans to tell me how wrong I am. Sorry if I bungled any of the pronunciation, I really did try to look it up in advance. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you guys want to get involved in my scheduling or support this channel, link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to this schedule. More details right over there. If you want to see the schedule, it's in my Instagram, link below. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.